Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise, and we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Mogobe, the host of this wonderful show, Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. Always a privilege and an honor to come and share something with you. We do our best to bring life-changing, empowering business education. That's what we're about. To light your entrepreneurial fire, as it were. And I have a gentleman to do just that in Molibi Maphanyane. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Okay.
Would you be kind enough to share with the viewers your background in terms of your vocation and what you do currently?
Yes. Well, I think I'm a pretty interesting case because I'm an economist by trade. I've been in the startup, bootstrapping, restructuring type of role since I started. Mm-hmm. So really, what I've found myself being capable of doing is leveraging relationships, my understanding of strategy, processes, that type of thing, to take a business from A to B.
Wonderful. Could you share on the academic side what you've done to get where you are?
I've got a bachelor's degree in economics from Amherst College in the United States, and then once I did finish there, I had my first startup in Boston, which was a social media startup. And this was really before we had your YouTubes, etc., etc. And we took a few concepts, put them together, and we wanted to start a global scouting network.
Wow.
To be able to give a child in Australia the chance to play for Manchester United.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds very interesting. I'm sure we'll talk about that as our conversation develops. But you mentioned a boot camp. Some of the viewers may not know what a boot camp is and what it involves.
Oh, well, I was speaking about bootstrapping.
Bootstrapping.
Yeah,
yes,
so
okay.
Bootstrapping is essentially the skill of being able to take limited resources and go and achieve your goals. And so it requires creativity. And once again, I speak about relationships, an understanding of finance, an understanding of accounting, and taking those resources and really maximizing them to be able to achieve the growth that you want to achieve.
Okay, that's really working on just in layman terms, working on a skinny budget.
Yeah, working on a skinny budget is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But when you look at somebody who's got the skill set that I have, I like to look at it as being a very well-rounded person. So I can take my knowledge of different spheres and fields and apply them to the workspace.
Okay.
Yeah.
You and I met when you were at Franklin Covey. Tell us about what that organization does and what your role was with that organization.
Well, I was the managing director at Franklin Covey, and Franklin Covey used to focus, well, still does focus on, organizational culture. Really allowing people to understand who they need to be as individuals and as a group to be able to achieve their goals. Oftentimes this is neglected in the workspace.
Yeah.
So everybody needs to grow, but sometimes as well, we also need to grow together. How do we work together? What are the accepted norms? And how can we decide on what those norms are? Because those norms, they haven't been there all the time.
Yes.
They don't have to be there all the time. They can change depending on what we want to do.
Yes.
So we decide on what those norms are based on our goals.
And tell us about the organization Franklin Covey. Obviously, is the author of The 8th Habit and also the earlier books, The 7th Habit of Highly Effective People. Tell us about the organization and the man.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet him before he passed on?
Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet him, but I did get to meet his sons, and I was part of the global organization as the managing director of the local partnership.
Yes.
So more or less the story goes like this. He was an educator, and he wrote papers in the area of workplace culture and productivity, individual productivity. And that leveraged itself into becoming a consultant for US government, for presidents, for businesses, and global organizations, leading to him founding the Franklin Covey organization. It's a consulting company that then offers both the knowledge in terms of training, the practical implementation, and full consulting services in order to do cultural turnaround, like being able to achieve your strategic goals. So how you lay it out, how you measure it. Also my specialty actually with Franklin Covey was in innovation as well, because you can structure innovation. It's not a gift, it's a skill that can be learned. And then, leadership, management, anything that you can look at and say, this is perhaps a soft skill that can be developed.
Okay. And how long were you with that organization?
I was with Franklin Covey for 6 years.
Okay.
I came in as the operations manager. Once again, my skill set was being put to use. And then I moved on to become the managing director for 3 years.
Okay. We're going to talk about having a productive day.
Yes.
Something as simple as having a productive day. Give us a working definition of what you mean in terms of a productive day.
That's a very interesting question. And I think about it a couple of ways. The first is, are you able to turn around at the end of the day and understand what you have achieved? And really give yourself a scorecard. Am I moving forward or am I moving backwards? Did I win or did I lose? And that's ultimately how you can decide whether or not your day is productive. I think another way that you can look at it is to sort of say to yourself, even when I am not at my best, what am I able to achieve? And what you'll find is that a lot of people who are highly productive will turn around and say, I've achieved nothing today. And then when they do that assessment, they say, oh, wow, actually, I did quite a bit.
Yes.
So we want to raise the baseline for what productivity is. So when you're having a bad day, you need to be at least producing at a standard level. When you're having a good day, you should be moving in leaps and bounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the efficiency and effectiveness, words like that, have any role? Because I've heard that there's a distinction between effectiveness and efficiency.
Wow, that's a very good question. So I'd look at it like this. Efficiency is the capability to go through tasks quickly. Effectively is to do the right tasks.
Okay. And in terms of creating a productive day, both those come into play, am I right?
They do come into play. But, once again, there's a very serious question of, am I doing the right thing? You may be doing the right thing, but are you doing the best thing? Is this the best use of my time for what I would like to achieve? And that's a question you need to ask yourself often. So efficiency would be doing a lot of things, and effectiveness would be doing the right thing that gives the most return, gives the highest value to either yourself or your organization or your personal project.
Yeah. And one of the things we want to dig into is knowing your value. I suppose for you to be productive, that's a starting point.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that for us? What does that mean, and how do you establish your value?
I think knowing your value is a multifaceted concept. The first is, what is the worth of your time, right? If you can sort of quantify that for yourself, when you know your value, you know what you're good at, what you should be doing, what you should be getting for what you're doing. When you know what you should be getting for what you're doing, you won't be sitting and saying, You know,
Underpaying.
I'm being underpaid, or I'm being underpaid, so I'm going to underwork. All these different things. When you know your value and what your value is to the organization or to a team, and what you are getting from it, and you can synchronize those things so that there's a nice equilibrium. You feel good about what you're doing, and it's not necessarily monetary value. It could be it's a stepping stone to another position, but you know what your value is. Yeah.
Coming in as a consultant, are you able to go through senior management or even the CEO and help them establish those values and help them get to a number?
Certainly, you can come to a number for yourself, and we can have that conversation. But I think one of the biggest problems that we actually have in this country is not necessarily that we don't the number, is that we suffer from a massive level of imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome, which is the idea that you don't deserve to be in the position that you're in. And when you suffer from imposter syndrome, you do a couple of things. The first thing is you pretend you know everything. If you deserve to be where you are, you're willing to accept where your weaknesses are, right? Then you don't want to improve, right? You don't engage, and you pass the buck and the blame. You never say, it's my fault.
Never take responsibility.
You never take responsibility, because there's the fear that if you're found out not to be worthy of your position, whether it is receptionist or CEO, you will always try to hide.
How did you come to this conclusion that it is a malignancy, or shall I say a malady that affects the community as a whole?
There's a couple of ways. In short, it's from doing projects and understanding, coming to understand people. When you see somebody unwilling to do a job because they're afraid of failure and obfuscating at every opportunity in order to try to hide the fact that they don't want to do the job, most likely it's because they don't believe they're going to succeed and they don't want to try.
Is this something that is curable?
It's entirely curable. And it really comes to the second, to one of my big points. The biggest thing is we see it a lot in when people are afraid to make a decision, right? When you're afraid to make a decision, it's because you're afraid that you're not going to be able to defend that decision, and you're afraid of the consequences. So you'll find it, let's talk about leadership perhaps. At leadership level, you should be saying to your subordinates, you are capable. I'm leaving this to you. What is your suggestion? What do you think? Please, I'm hiring you because you're smarter than me in this place.
Yeah.
So please tell me what you think and suggest. Question those and improve the thinking and logic processes so that the person is empowered to make decisions.
Wow.
And let them go on their way. And let them know that it's okay to make a mistake as long as they can defend it. Right? Make them feel safe. So it comes down from this leadership, from top leadership, where we're saying to people, no, you're not allowed to make a mistake. You're not allowed to perform, ultimately, and therefore someone can feel insecure in their position. So yeah, that's
is this malady, so to speak, prevalent in the private sector or in the public service, or both?
It's both, because I get told often, in my new job, and it's in a lot of jobs, they'll say, no, but that's the culture, right? I think it's 65% of our employed people are employed by government, right? So the prevalent culture is a government culture, and it seeps its way into your organization unless you, as a leader, stand at the door and say, you shall not pass.
Now, the thought is popping in my head. I'm wondering, does government recognize this, and are people like yourself being utilized sufficiently to help address this?
Government is fully aware of this. Unfortunately, because of the nature of the malady, nothing gets done. So the government is fully, our head of state recognized this and spoke publicly about it and against it, this malady of inefficiency, ineffectiveness, twiddling of thumbs and non-activity.
And he spoke of a reset. Is a reset taking place?
To be honest, I'm not in that space anymore, so I don't know if a reset has taken place. But the fact is that our head of state is aware of it. I've heard of it spoken about in other circles. But ultimately, it's not necessarily just a government problem. It's in the private sector. It's deep-seated in the private sector as well. And, unless a conscious decision to change is made, it will the full reset. But you can do it in as small as your 5-person organization, your 10-person organization, your 200, 2,000, 200,000, whatever it is. You need to be conscious of it. And I'll just say, one of my favorite Stephen Covey's statements is if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting.
That's true.
Yeah.
Observe sticking points. Help us understand that. How do you go about observing sticking points, and what's your definition of a sticking point?
So this is again multifaceted, right? So when you know your value, you know what you're good at. You will see and understand where things are going wrong in your day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month processes. And those are sticking points, right? So these are problems, and you can do two things. You can either make a decision to be the solution to that sticking point, to help that process glide, or you can avoid that sticking point in some way, shape, or form. Both are equally acceptable, as long as you're finding ways to deal with the problem. Personally, I like permanent solutions. I go in and I try to fix it. Because then it won't become a problem in the future. But as long as you're fully aware of where the sticking points are, not only in your life, but in other people's roles, in your organization, in the public place, and you understand your value and apply it to the sticking point, you are being productive.
Without mentioning names, can you give examples of companies you've interacted with or you consulted for where you identified sticking points and went through them? I try to practicalize things as best as you can, without, of course, exposing names.
Yeah, look, one of the best ones is there's a company with, and it's got multiple companies, subsidiaries. All of them have a leadership meeting once a week. At this leadership meeting, people point fingers and this and that and the other. And the big problem is that there was a lack of communication. So I sat down and I said, what's the problem? And they pointed fingers. This one lies. This one does this. This one does that. And so we've drilled it down to the key thing. They didn't have a unified customer relationship management system. Just like that, bang. Buy a customer relationships management system, spread it out across everybody. Everybody knows who's talking to whom and why, who is where, what the client needs. They hand over the client smoothly, done. The sticking point was it had gotten to a toxic level of trust, but the real basis was there wasn't a system. And so,
how long does it take to figure that out? Is it a huge task?
Look, we worked with this business for a number of years. I wouldn't call it a massive success story, but that at least was something that we were able to do to knock down a few walls, because initially when you have to share data, so now I'm in the technology space, right?
Yes.
So when you have to share data, you have to at least start a little bit of collaboration. And then when you talk about what is most important to you, light bulbs go off. So it's never an event, it's a process. And that applies to every single thing you'll probably do in your life, except go to the bar.
Okay.
That's an event.
Yeah. Well, that takes us to my next point, which is the importance of purpose above process. You say think purpose above process.
Yes.
Yeah. Simplify that.
It ties back into the sticking points, right? So if I want to achieve a specific goal, is it most important how I get there or that I get there? right? So every time you are working in functions, whether it's a government function, departmental function, an organizational function, your individual function, always keep the purpose in mind and don't let purpose get in the way of you don't let process get in the way of you getting to your ultimate goal. So you get to situations where somebody has a checklist and they need to tick everything on their checklist. But now one item comes that addresses all 4 items. It addresses 4 items in a one. That person will refuse that. Yes. Because they are used to their process. But what they don't have in mind is my end goal is KYC, for instance, right? So if I get this, it serves multiple purposes. It gets me to the end goal, and my individual process that I'm so used to doesn't have to be the same. And this needs to go down to every frontline person as well as every CEO. If you get stuck on the process, you will build in inefficiencies over and over and over again to make up for a bad process while losing sight of your end purpose. What is it you're trying to achieve?
Is this what Stephen Covey meant in the 7 Habits when he says, begin with the end in mind?
Certainly. But I think for me, the difference with that is when you begin with the end in mind, you don't proceed with the end in mind. Right? So keep your purpose central to every single thing that you do. And when somebody comes with a solution, don't be upset that there's a new process.
So don't you then, some organizations need to spend time, invest some time in identifying the purpose? Because sometimes some organizations feel like headless chickens running around.
No, and that goes back to what they call it, a gopher. Somebody says, go for this, go for that, go for that.
Like shiny object syndrome.
Exactly. But what happens is there's an individual who doesn't have full sight of everything. That is they don't have they're not standing on the mountain, right? And getting the information and making small tweaks. They are on the ground saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. Meanwhile, the next layer of people, they're all on the same level, so you can't see everywhere. The next layer of people have a better view, but they're listening to go for this, go for that, go for this. And that's why you have people doing headless chicken type
I've had a guest, I think is the CEO of Lead, Drucker.
Yes.
Saying that part of the problem is that organizations reach a certain level of complexity where they need a different mindset altogether and they are not aware of it.
It's got to do with a lot of different, but yes, you almost need to bring in a completely new perspective to have an understanding of that level of complexity. And it's a theory of natural growth of an organization. But ultimately, there are multiple organizations and examples across the world that started as a one-person shop, a mom and pop shop, or whatever they call it, all these different names, and have grown into global powerhouses with the same leader there, right? So ultimately, it goes down to being able to be flexible. An
adaptive leader, isn't it?
Yes, highly adaptive. A growth-oriented adaptive leader. Also understanding what they're good at and stepping back and allowing somebody else to take over what they're not good at. So,
this one may seem obvious, communicate. It may seem like it's an obvious thing, but I think there's an underlying meaning that you want to share with us, the importance of communication.
This goes back to knowing your value, right? So when you know your value, you communicate your value. And that's not in an arrogant way. It's just to say, is to also know what your weakness is. It means communicate when you're not doing well, communicate when you are doing well, communicate at all times. Because when you communicate and say, I'm not doing well, when you communicate and say, I'm running late, when you communicate and say, I'm not going to manage this, that allows somebody else to step in to help you fulfill your purpose, right? So that capability to communicate and communicate honestly is very lacking. You'll have a situation where you go in to get something done and somebody says, get that hotusa. Meanwhile, 6 months down the line, they turn around and say, I actually couldn't help you in the first place. And this
After
happened.
telling, what's worse is when they tell you to keep coming tomorrow.
Yes, exactly.
Or
exactly.
a week later, you know.
Exactly.
And in the end, they say, no, it's beyond my pay grade or something.
Exactly. So, and this comes back to the same issue of communication. When you know your value, when you're thinking purpose, you're able to say, this is my purpose, this is my value. You can fill in the gaps where you can.
Are you able to elucidate this point further with examples from your career, from your consulting activities, the importance of communication?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I've brought to my new organization, which I think is quite different, and it takes a while for people to get used to it, and that's why I kind of love what I do. When I go into a new space and you're sharing new ideas, the idea that all calendars are open. Everybody knows what you're doing when. It lets somebody know, I can't put this task on this person's plate because they're very busy today. Let me rather handle it myself. And because now we've opened up these channels of trust, the communication is free, right? To say, I don't know this, but I can learn to do it better. You know, and that's what we really try to keep the channels of communication going all the time. And we say rather over communicate than under communicate.
Okay, do you want to take a moment to share what you're doing currently? I see a broad smile comes to your face when you talk about what you're doing and how you love it. But we haven't really told us much about what you're doing. I'm curious about that.
Well, I'm very happy to be in the place that I'm in. Because as I said, when I started my career, I started in the technology space and innovation space. So I'm partnered in Stencil Technologies, and
what's that?
We're a IT consulting firm, custom development firm. So you know, we have also global partners around the world, and we look at very niche solutions to companies' problems or organizations' problems, and we come in and we slot in and solve that. So there's a couple of things that I love about it. One, we are getting to know a lot of the workings of the institutions and organizations in this country. Two, we're not asking them to reinvent the wheel. We're coming in and saying, okay, let us help you with that. Three, I think a lot of people are not used to that conversation when we say, no. What you have works. We're just going to tweak it for you, right? And that level of both being creative, also being honest, and finding those right solutions, it excites me, right? And I guess it speaks to that. I know my value, all right? My value is not to come here and tell you, no, change everything, right? That's not honest to you, right? And I know that I can actually maximize my margins just by doing the thing that I'm good at, that's going to be able to give you the best value.
So do you then give your clients time to observe how your advice, you know, when the rubber hits the road, as it were, how your advice translates to actual practical?
Well, certainly.
Solutions,
Before I start any engagement, once again, we're thinking purpose, right? I say, why are we doing this, right? And I get there at Exco level, I say, why are you doing this? And we get some answers that are a bit, okay, we're doing it to do it. And then I sort of move on. But there'll always be a bright spark that says, this is going to improve my turnaround time. This is going to lower my, my operational costs. This is going to maximize my margins. It's going to open a new market and so on and so forth. And we can hone in on a specific metric that we say that this particular interaction is going to affect your business in this way, right? And if we can do that, then, and we try to make it one thing, right? If we can do that, then we can focus on getting that done and turning around in 6 months' time and saying, have we achieved what we wanted to achieve?
And obviously this is data driven, and you mentioned that, you know, technology, you have a little bit of background in that regard, but to what extent in what you're doing does technology play a role, and how do you marshal it to achieve your purposes?
So, you know, I'm the strategy guy. I'm not the technical man. So, you know, I'm more on driving the business. And, you know, interacting with the clients, as well as project management as well, project managing where we're going. But technology can be the one solution that makes all the difference to the continent. And I like to say, I am focused on unleashing the latent talent. But once I think I've achieved that to some degree, my next goal is to help us define our own future and not to accept it as it's given to us.
We create it.
We create it because there's nothing that we can't do. Every time we build something, you create it first in your mind and then with your hands.
Wow.
Right? There's nothing that we can't do if we sit down together and say, what is the world that we want to go to? And that's when we start becoming innovators in the truest sense.
So even the technology, we then deploy it and adapt it.
Yes.
With the purpose in mind.
Exactly.
Wow.
I will say, just to drop in, one of the key things that we're doing is when we have we have a number of partners, global partners, and we're looking to, and the types of relationships that we get in are skill share relationships that allow Botswana and partners in other areas where we are, other countries, to be able to get those skills and that knowledge, and then innovate around it and share it back with those partners, so that we now have solutions that speak particularly to our environment and in the different SADC countries. Yeah.
Going back to the issue of a productive day, there's plans and lists.
Yes.
Tell us about the importance of the plans and lists.
Ultimately, everybody knows, right, what a list is, and everybody knows what a plan is. What do they say when
you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Exactly. Like when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So just make it a habit to set out your week and plan months in advance. And even if you are not in charge of your specific plan, you're just allowing yourself to be made busy. Things are slotting into your calendar. You're accepting appointments 6 months down the road. Your dental appointment is booked 6 months in advance. You're building a plan, something that you can work around. So you have an understanding of what every day, every week is going to be. And then you focus in on your, this is a Franklin Covey discipline as well. You focus in on a week and then you focus in on a day. So if you have a plan and you have a list of things you need to do, that half a second when you go, oof, I have a break, and you look at your list and you go, oh, actually, this is something I can knock out of the park very quickly. You start being highly productive every single day. And when you have appointments or sections of time or commitments that you know that you have to achieve, you can get to them and get it done as a bit of a slog. It forces you to be able to get it done. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying on your bad days, on the days where you're low energy and you're struggling, you're still able to achieve more than most other people would achieve. Raise the bar, raise the basement of what you can achieve in a day.
I don't know whether you've read Peter Drucker, but I don't know whether some of these learnings are from him, because I can see a little bit of him emerging as you're talking.
Well, I have indeed. I've touched on Peter Drucker. I've read a couple of his papers, obviously, through my studies, but I'm not sure. Maybe I'm plagiarizing him. I don't know.
he thinks is rest his soul now and it's passed on, but he's one of the guys who talk along those lines, and it was written extensively. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Yes, be yourself. In other words, be an individual. But there's a lot of cultural thinking and there's a lot of desire to blend in. I don't know, when we were teenagers we called it peer pressure, but I don't know what to call it now.
Well, I mean, I suppose they're still your peers, but this goes back to a number of the things that I've spoken about already. So knowing your value, understanding your purpose, getting what you need to get done, right, is really an idea of being yourself. And that idea that everybody else is taken is that if you try to be someone other than you are, you will fail, right? So there are many ways to emulate somebody that you admire. Take the good, leave the bad, understand what it is, but don't ever confuse that with who you are as an individual. And it comes down to another thing, which is who you are as an individual is something that you choose. And if somebody else has taken that person and you're trying to take that role, you're going to fail. So understand your value, understand yourself, and understand where you can add value.
Is this a lot of psychological mumbo jumbo? Do you have to go and see your therapist to figure that out?
You
really
don't
know yourself.
Well, look, personally, I am actually a very big advocate for therapy. I think everybody needs a sounding board where nobody is going to judge them. There's many things. We sit at home and we just mull over these things and they don't actually go anywhere. So yes, go to therapy. But to really understand yourself is to be able to question yourself. Don't accept yourself as you are. Okay, I'm being paradoxical.
Yes.
But my point is, don't consider yourself to be fixed, to be immovable, unshapable. Because if you do not question who you are, why you do things, you will never truly understand yourself.
Because part of knowing yourself is to recognize that you are changing.
Yes.
And to adapt with your the change that is occurring as you grow. You're not the same person you were 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That is a challenge for the average person, even for myself.
Certainly. Continually checking on yourself, continually asking yourself, continually looking for growth, and seeing how can I do better.
And how does that help your day become more productive? It enables you to what? To recognize not just that the environment around you is changing, but you also are changing.
Exactly. And I must say, there is a significant amount of time in my I'm not sure whether it's in all society. It's not unique to ours. But there's a lot of time spent trying to pretend to be somebody that you're not. A lot of time, energy, money spent trying to be something other than what you are.
In the Botswana context, can you give an example of that without necessarily giving names?
No names, but look, I speak a lot about masculinity. I consider myself to be a pretty masculine person. I'm a rugby player. I'm an executive. All these.
You're a hunter.
I know how to hunt.
I've seen you hunting on social media.
Yes, I know how to hunt. I'm a farmer. I'm from a farming family. All of these maybe traditional ideas of what masculinity is. But I also find that we have there's a toxic idea of what masculinity is. And it gets quite far. Heteronormative. Abusive, abusing alcohol and drugs or whatever, driving a nice car, spending money in ways that are unsustainable. That now becomes the toxicity of masculinity, right?
You mentioned driving a nice car.
Yeah.
Why? Why is it that toxic?
Well, because some people will view the car that they drive as a signal for their masculinity. So now they go and buy a car that they can't afford, because if they don't buy that car, they're not enough of a man for who? Who is judging whether or not?
Trying to impress the neighbors who don't even care.
Who don't even care, right?
Yeah.
So all of this is speaking to an internal insecurity and not an understanding of who you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have to multiply ourselves. I try to do that by way of empowering my managers and growing businesses. But I think you meant it in a different way here.
That is more or less the crux of it. Empower people to do work that they can do, right? And that means that when you are doing something, understand it understand it as not as let's put it this way. Let me try it again. I spoke a bit about, is this the best thing that I could be doing, right? So oftentimes, in order to multiply yourself, the best thing that you could be doing is clearing the path for somebody else. right? So when you multiply yourself, you empower people around you to do what they are best at. And where they find a sticking point, you remove the sticking point and they proceed. So while you move on to another task, something else is happening, right?
Yes.
And that is the key of multiplying yourself. Because instead of becoming a screwdriver, right, you become a leverage point, right? So where force is applied upon you, the action is outsized. Oops. The action is outsized beyond your individual power. Sorry. Is that all right? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Good, thanks. Oh, on my blazer. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is this the same notion of the idea that you set up a business and you walk away for 6 months or a year and it's still running? Is that an absurd version of it?
Look, to be honest, if you're able to do that, then what you've probably done is invested quite heavily in getting the right people to operate your business, as well as incentivize them to be able to be successful in that business. And then it becomes a question of, if you walk away for 6 months, do you have a business or are you just an investor?
And help us understand the distinction.
Well, an investor will advise here and there because they are the people that have given you the capability to start a business. But if you have a business, you are the primary benefactor of a business, right? And you are using assets that have been entrusted with you to be able to benefit from them. There's an interesting concept that I speak about a lot with anybody that I've worked with, which is, what is a business? A business is a vehicle for everybody to achieve their own individual goals. That means from the cleaning lady to the salesperson to all of these, they are all stakeholders in the business, and they all should have a desire for that business to be successful. A lot of people will turn around and say, business kya John. So all the problems, but that's really not what it is. This is a what they call it, a legal person whose function is to help people get what they want to achieve. The employees get their benefits monthly upfront.
Wow.
The owners get their benefits over time in business value. That's the only difference.
Whereas with the investor, I just want you to just put your finger on that main distinction.
The investor entrusts the owner with the asset, comes back after 6 months and expects to find it better.
Can you be both?
You can be both, but if you are a business owner, you must have an understanding of what the business is doing. So, like I'm saying, if you walk away for 6 months, 6 months is not too absurd. You can take a sabbatical for 6 months.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah.
But in that period of time, you must have entrust. You turn into an investor. You are entrusting somebody with your asset, and you expect it to get a return over a period of time.
I suppose also with technology, you can still always stay in touch anyway.
Then you are not walking away.
True,
right?
True.
Then you are involved in the day-to-day.
Yeah.
Now it is your business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Do your homework.
Do your homework is key to me. Basically, it means understand what you are doing every day. Do not, look, everybody has to do it every now and then, right? There's only so much time. But for as much as you can, understand the processes and the what's the word? And the systems that will help you achieve what you want to achieve. And because when you don't quite know what you're doing, you will end up walking through a maze and you'll be highly confused. The other part about doing your homework is also to know that part of your homework is always to ask another question and to be curious. So, and this will start to form that library of systems and processes so that you're able to achieve quickly. So when somebody tells you something, don't be afraid to ask how or why. Don't just accept it as manna from on high. Question and try to understand it. And that's the real homework, day to day.
Okay, so doing your homework also includes knowing how to say no, isn't it? Knowing how to avoid responsibility, to avoid overburdening yourself.
Well, certainly. This comes back to, am I doing the best thing right now? Being able to say no is massive. And it also comes back to communication, right? Being able to say, I can't do that, and saying, I don't have the cycles. And there's a lot cycles as in time. And one of the tools that a lot of people need to learn is to say, I'm doing this right now. Should I stop doing that and do this? And most times, if you are doing the best thing, the other person will then realize, oh, no, you're doing the best thing. Let me know when you can do it. And that is a very difficult skill for people to learn.
We have a concept in real estate which we call highest and best use. And I think it does apply to HR as well, in terms of really asking yourself constantly, is this the highest and best use of my skills and my time?
Yes.
Yeah. And constantly adapting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you agree with me.
I do.
You want to add on to that?
No, sorry. Yes. I do.
Yeah.
That's it. No, I don't have anything to add. I think people really need to realize that they need to ask themselves that question in all spheres of life. Is this the best use of my time? Sometimes you get an order and you have to sort of say, okay, I'm going to get this order done, but I'm going to get back to the highest and best use of my time. It's critical.
Yeah. Don't take no for an answer. I've heard others say take no prisoners as well. It's not the same thing.
No, look, always take prisoners, because if you can convert them, it's always good.
Yeah.
If you take any of the great generals over time, Shaka Zulu, the Romans, all of these people, they took many prisoners and converted them to soldiers.
Yeah, that's true.
Take prisoners.
Yeah.
But don't take no for an answer. If you've done your homework and you know what you're entitled to, continue to ask for it. Continue to ask for it over and over and over again until you get it, especially if it's critical. Look, I have a concept that I tell to my team. I say, win fast, lose fast. If you see somebody is immovable, unbudgeable, and you don't think you're going to get on them, right? Get over them, lose fast. Put your effort, best use of your time, right? But if somebody's standing...
So you can take no in such a circumstance.
You can take no in such a circumstance. However, there's somebody who works with them. There's somebody who works above them.
Okay.
And you can say, I accept your no, I'm going round, I'm going to ask somebody else because I have an objective that I need to achieve.
I've heard a salesman say that your job is to turn the no into a maybe and then into a yes. What do you think about that?
Look, you can do that. What you want to do is, if somebody says a no that makes no sense at all, you know that it's not necessarily what you're saying. That's the problem, right? So if you keep working at that, you're wasting your time. You're hitting your head against the wall.
Yeah.
But if you take that no and ask a question around it, you'll often find that either there's a competing priority that you can still serve, or in fact, that person is not the right person to be talking to. So it's wonderful. In
other words, he may not be a decision maker.
He may not be a decision maker, exactly. So you don't have to beat yourself your head against the wall with this process of turning it into a maybe. Understand that the purpose is to get somewhere and say, okay, here's your no, but I'm going to find a yes somewhere else. Yeah.
Are you able to give examples in your career where you were able to turn a seemingly immovable no into a wonderful yes?
Oh boy, wow. This is not one that I can say too much about,
Yeah.
but there was an exclusive offer to expand a business significantly without much effort. We got a no. The no made no sense. So we said, okay, that's fine. That's okay. You are aware of these things. Okay. Then we engaged somewhere else on something similar and dropped the knowledge. The yes came back. But then the yes was a maybe. We went and offered it to somebody else. The yes became a please don't do this without me.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. But you had to demonstrate your ability with two third parties,
Yes.
if you like, two other parties, before they turned into a yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Look, we talk about this imposter difficulty. One of the things that we find is that
Imposter syndrome.
imposter syndrome. One of the things that we find is that people benefit from inaction more than they benefit from action.
Because the salary is coming anyway.
Exactly. So to take an action is to take a risk. So a lot of people are disincentivized to take risk. So people should not be necessarily paid for maintaining. They should be paid for growth. That's a KPI. And you haven't achieved the growth. So, sorry.
Well, to my mind, that means put them on commission.
Commission lends itself to, yes, it's an incentive, right? Commission is often used in sales, right? But there are different types of people. A true salesperson and a true growth-minded person is not incentivized by money. They just want to see the growth, right? And commission leads to uncertainty and instability. Those are things that can actually disrupt productivity. So rather set a KPI that says, if you achieve these specific things, you're doing your job. And if you're not achieving those things, I'm going to find somebody else that can. And that's the second part that we often fail at. To say, I'm sorry, but I'm doing you a favor by saying you're not good at this job.
For those who don't know, that means a key performance indicator. We run away with our acronym sometimes.
Yes, that's true.
And we forget the viewer. All right. Prove your value. Prove your value.
You're very good at this because you've pulled me into it.
Yeah.
So proving your value is when you understand your value and you understand the things that you're doing, make sure that you're leaving a trail of success. So when you know what you're doing every single day, set those things out. Prove your value in performance indicators, right? So when you turn around and say, I have sold this much, or I have developed this much growth, or I've assisted this many clients, those are things that prove your value, and nobody can take that away from you. So when you are asked at the end of a week or month or quarter by somebody that you're working with, what have you achieved? You are not shy. You don't tell stories. You just put it in front of them and say, sir, what do you think? Ma'am, what do you think? Does this mean that I get that yes that I've been asking for? Because I'm proving to you my value.
Yeah.
My value must not be an idea. It must be tangible. Where somebody says, hey, la, hataba agatama. What are we going to do in this business?
In other words, have a way of translating your value to numbers.
Look, sometimes it doesn't have to be a fully tangible as such, but it must be clear to the people that you are engaging with what you're bringing to the table. Because every day you're sending in a report. Every day you're bringing in a success. I mean, you can do it on a numbers format. I like it in a numbers format. I ask the people I work with to work in a numbers format. But if you're consistently delivering something, even if it's delivering something to say, please have a look at this so I can come back and make it better for you, that is demonstrating your value.
Okay.
Right.
Very interesting. A conversation like this would be incomplete without me asking about COVID. People have talked about COVID as a disaster. Some have talked about it as having a dividend. What is your assessment? How has it impacted you and your business? And have you seen any of this dividend that people talk about?
Look, COVID it's a natural human disaster, to be honest. We can't speak about the disruption that it has caused in people's lives and also the lives that have been lost without being, it's something that will affect us for a long time on a very personal scale. From a business perspective, I remember when COVID first happened, everything stopped. And that meant that people went home and did nothing. And meanwhile, the world was going and things needed to happen and the bills needed to be paid. And then we get subsidies and then the subsidies run out. And
run out after 2 months or something.
And we're still sitting. When disruption happens, there's opportunity. As I said, when the disruption happened, I said, this is my time to fly because there's a need within the business to restructure. I think this is an opportunity to find myself somewhere else doing something else. So disruption creates opportunity, and you cannot sit and wait to be disrupted because you are being disrupted while you sit.
Anyway, it's going to happen anyway.
It's going to happen anyway. It's happening right now. Right now there's something happening that's disrupting, and I need to be able to innovate around it and find a solution. So I hope that with the great tragedy that is COVID and what has happened, that we will learn from it and find a way to make the best of it, because with what we have lost, it would be a great shame if we didn't take the lessons.
Yeah. So did you pivot?
No, I jumped.
You didn't just pivot, you jumped. Yeah.
I pivoted Franklin Covey to working with Global as well, to really work with people where they were. I remember we were in lockdown. I hired a group of taxis to take mobile routers to people so that they could conference, that type of thing. That's a pivot. But I jumped into technology because I felt that there's an opportunity to make a great difference there. And so that was it. And people have an understanding now that things have to change. And a lot of things that we took for granted, we said, those are overseas things. All of a sudden, it became, this is a necessity here.
Came right to your front door. Yeah.
So now people realize that if they don't plan to build it how they need it to be, it will end up being a way that they don't want it to be.
Be something else. Somebody will plan it for them.
Someone will plan it for them. That's exactly it. Yeah.
All right. Time to ask me a question. Shoot.
Sure. I guess, one of the questions that I've always asked myself about you, since we met some years ago, is what is it that attracts you to a different line of business? Because you are quite diversified. Is it deliberate in your diversification, or is there another way that you choose a new path?
Yeah, I know you're going to ask me to reveal my secrets now, but let me do it anyway.
I thought that's the point, the nuggets.
But it is actually. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But the point here is that personal development has been a very central part of what I do the last 20 years. So I've gotten the notion that, look, we have no control over how many days we have on this planet. We do have control to some extent, but still there's an overriding force. You can be snatched away at any time. So make it interesting, make it exciting for yourself. So I have this rule that I want to learn something different, something exciting, something invigorating, something I've never done before every single year. So I've adopted this rule and have applied it to law, and we reached the level that we did. to use the words of Rakhamanyane, I reached a level of complexity, which, you know,
Yeah.
and then I started looking elsewhere, which is in the real estate space, and doing both side by side. But come 2013, I decided, look, let me focus on real estate so I can do big projects like this, Mogobe Plaza, etc. But still, as part of that thinking, look, let's me energize myself and redirect my attention to something new, because life is short. Whether you end up having 40 years or you end up having 120, by cosmic standards and cosmic terms, that's very short. You might as well be a fly in terms of in bigger terms. So realizing this, I then adopted the view or the posture that every year I will embark on something new and something interesting, without risking the entire business. In other words, I do not gamble the entire business.
Yeah.
So I always say to myself, can I risk maybe 5%, of the business and do something new, and then see how far I can push it. And by God's grace, so far it has worked. Whether it's restaurants, whether it's podcasts and YouTubing, whether it's moving to another area of real estate altogether, such as what we're dabbling into now. We're dabbling into advertising and putting up pylons and things like that. It has so far been successful. I hope I've answered your question. But the whole idea is to find a way of giving back and having a bigger impact than you would otherwise have. So give back and have an impact, like our four what do you call them? Empower, enthuse, energize, and to inspire.
Yes.
Those are the 4 pillars. As long as we can grow doing that and doing more of that, that is the philosophy that is guiding all this.
So it's the discipline of moving beyond your comfort zone in a almost structured fashion when it comes to what you're risking. Understanding the risk involved.
Yes.
Doing so at a regular,
yearly basis.
Regular cadence.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And then understanding how that can, with each one of those ventures, you're looking at how it can feed back into the loop.
Yes.
Right. So that you're not the only. Because sustainability is about equity.
It's very, very important.
So if you want to be sustainable in this venture, you're making sure that other people are benefiting from it.
Other businesses we started, like for instance, we started, we started a preschool. Didn't do so very well because of COVID.
Yeah.
Other businesses have been hammered by other things, but because of that diversification of risk as well.
Yes.
We've been able to sustain ourselves.
Yeah.
So I hope I've answered your question.
You really have.
Yeah. And you've answered all of mine. Now this is your time to look at that camera.
Okay.
To talk to that entrepreneur, that youngster, whoever is behind that screen, to inspire them, to leave them with one takeaway from this message of having a productive day.
So the biggest takeaway that I can give you is that if you are not a little bit scared about what you're doing, it's not the right thing for you to be doing. If you're a little bit scared, it means it's slightly outside of your comfort zone. You're learning something new, something you'll be able to apply either at scale or through understanding, and it will allow you to be much more productive in terms of multiplying yourself or anything else that you want to do moving forward. So ask yourself that question all the time. Am I a little bit scared about what I'm doing right now? And that is most likely the highest value thing that you can do, because it is slightly outside of your comfort zone.
Okay. Now kindly share with the viewer your contact details. Some of them may want to use your services. Some of them may just want to clarify something that you've shared and that sort of thing. Give them all your contacts.
Well, the way I tend to interact with the public is through my Facebook page. So Molibi Maphanyane or Molibi the 8 on Facebook, as well as at Molibi on Instagram. You can also send me an email at molibi@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or interact with you in a different way, make a booking and have a discussion.
It remains for me to thank you, sir, for taking the time out of your extremely busy schedule and for sharing so generously and so openly. I'm certain that you've enriched quite a number of people, including myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.